In case you needed reminding, you don't have to be on a six-figure salary or live in a penthouse to feel luxurious. Luxury is more about intentionality, living slowly, and having choice. And being frugal, although it's associated with cheapness, stinginess, actually is about being financially savvy. And being financially savvy is what gives you that freedom and choice. So I created this philosophy, Frugal Chic, and it's about living luxuriously while spending intentionally. And today we're going to focus on the living luxuriously part, because I think that you can have little luxuries in your day-to-day that don't have to cost that much. So the first one is having an early bedtime or having a nighttime routine. I know that sounds really obvious, everyone says that, but what does that actually mean? Really winding down, making sure that you don't go on your phone like maybe 2 hours before bedtime. But why? Why have an early bedtime? Okay, so there's this whole 5 a.m. club, and I wouldn't subscribe to the idea that you have to wake up at 5 a.m. to be successful. I think that's utterly ridiculous. And I have read Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. And basically from that book, I gathered that it doesn't really matter when you wake up. You could be a night owl or an early bird. You shouldn't try to be one or the other. If you are that way naturally, don't try to fight it. The more important thing is your circadian rhythm and actually just getting the same set numbers of hours of sleep every single time, having the same bedtime and the same waking up time every single day. That is more important than the time you wake up. I think it's kind of arbitrary waking up at 5 a.m. Like, yes, I am quite an early bird. I will wake up at 5:30 or 6 sometimes, but that doesn't mean that I'm more successful, because someone who's a night owl might do more productive things later in the day. But the whole point about going to bed early is basically, if you want this 5 a.m. routine, then you do have to have an early bedtime. I see a lot of people romanticising the 5 a.m. lifestyle. You can just tell from the content or the way that they live their life, perhaps they go to bed later. That really scares me. I don't want to be missing out on any hours of sleep. So I think if you are going to try and be an early riser, then you have to have an early bedtime. Just be extremely strict with yourself. And if you find yourself struggling with this, like struggling to fall asleep, I would really recommend putting on a very boring YouTube video. There's even some that are like directed at this, but it could be like history to help you fall asleep. If you're struggling to sleep, definitely try reading. I always read for 10 minutes before I go to sleep, and when I do read, I just find that I fall asleep so much easier. So go to bed early, trust me, you'll thank me later. Number 2 is decluttering. I know this doesn't sound very sexy, like, ooh, decluttering, do I really want to do that? It feels like a chore, but I recently did this to my junk drawer, to my toiletries and my wardrobe, completely cleared it out, and I feel so much better. I feel like I can actually breathe. Your environment is everything, and I think if you can tailor your environment to really suit your needs, what you want, your aesthetic, actually thinking about what you own and decluttering, that is one way to feel more luxurious. Because now I have a bedside table that has a facial spray, has some retinol, like has very cutesy, luxurious things, but very minimal things that I would like to indulge in, as opposed to just random receipts or random stuff that I just stuffed in there because I didn't know what to do with it. I think when you're super busy and you're running a business like me, you tend to not be bothered to categorize things. You're just like, I'll do that later. And when you procrastinate on even the simple things in life, it makes the more complicated things more difficult. To run a business or to be productive, you have to have the right environment, the right systems. So I'd really recommend, if you have some time this weekend or even in the evenings, I've been spending an hour a day just decluttering my space, and it's really enjoyable. Put a podcast on while you're doing it. This is habit stacking, so you're doing multiple things at once, so you don't have to feel bad about wasting time if you're a bit type A like me, because you can catch up on that 3-hour lecture or podcast, you know, without feeling like you're wasting time. One thing that I would note here is try and get rid of things that you feel are low quality or not valuable to your life. So for example, with my wardrobe, I've started to get rid of synthetic fibers. I know that sounds kind of radical in our day and age because everything is made from polyester now, but I'm really trying to declutter these things, because for a while I was just holding on to them because I felt guilty. I didn't want to like create more waste by maybe donating them, because a lot of things that get donated don't actually like get sold. So I'm trying to sell them on Vinted first, I think. But another thing is I always say yes to freebies. So whether it's going to a hotel and taking the toothbrush, the shaving kit, the slippers, like, yes, it's fun, but it's really excessive and I just end up with so much clutter, and I think I need to be better about just saying no. So yes, it's the decluttering, but it's also the lessons that you learn from decluttering. Number 3 is drinking herbal tea. I know this sounds really simple, but I actually have been drinking coffee less and less, but especially in the afternoon. So like having a decaf coffee instead, or just not having caffeine after 12 p.m. It really helps to just ensure that you get a good night's sleep and just to relax you. And I find that herbal teas feel luxurious. Getting a nice mug if you don't have one, or just choosing one that is like your comfort mug, and just having your herbal tea. My preference is to have the loose leaf teas because I think these feel more luxurious. Appreciating the small things in life, like having a herbal tea, is really important. It's a luxury that costs, I mean, it still costs money, but £0. Number 4 is having a bath. I have recently discovered baths. I know that's ridiculous. Obviously, I've had baths in my life, but I was always a shower person. I was always quite like, I don't know, into hustle culture. So I was like, oh, it takes too much time to have a bath. But no, it's like one way to actually make your bathroom feel like a spa. Now, if you don't have a bath, then obviously skip this step, and you don't need to go out and buy bath crystals or a bath bomb or anything like that. I simply just make bubble bath with the body wash that I have, and that works perfectly. And lighting an old candle that you know are reluctant to light because of scarcity mindset, you think, oh, it's too nice to light. No, have it with your bath, and that actually feels like such a spa experience. Number 5 is journaling before bed. So I have this kind of idea of my day and how I'd like it to go. So the start of the day, I always like to put out something, so create something. So whether it's writing for my short form or long form, like my content creation stuff, and then in the middle of the day I'll educate, so I might watch a YouTube video or something to help me get inspired. And then at the end of the day, that is when I like decompress, and that's when I like put all of my ideas and thoughts out there. And I know that doesn't make any sense because like at the start of the day I'm creating something, but this is slightly different. It's kind of like you're taking a brain dump and you're just putting it down on paper, and it does help if you are a content creator like myself, like to get your ideas down and to like see what you're actually thinking about, because a lot of content creation isn't just making content for your niche, it's actually just solving your own problems publicly. And so you actually have to be aware of your problems. And so journaling for 10 minutes before bed, keeping a journal and a book on your bedside table is the easiest way to actually make this into a habit, because when something is near you, you're reducing the friction that it takes to do it. So don't, have your book on the shelf or anything, have it right next to you so that you find it much easier to reach for them. But you don't have to go out and buy a really cool journal that's like £30. You can just literally, I get loads of, don't know about anyone else, but I think I just have collected so many free notebooks over a long period of time. Just use something that's not very aesthetic, because it's not about the aesthetic, it's about what's in the book. Number 6 is having a low-cost hobby that feels creative and keeps you inspired. So growing up, I always loved to draw, but as an adult, I don't really do it enough because I find that my brain just says to me, this is a waste of time. And that's such a shame, because like, I don't want to toot my own horn, but as a kid, I think I actually had a talent for it, and I think I've lost it over the years. So reconnecting with your child self, because I think what you enjoyed as a child is probably what you'll also enjoy as an adult. Chess, it could be puzzles or something that doesn't, it doesn't have to lead to monetization, like you're doing it simply because you enjoy it. Number 7 is an obvious one, reading. Now, the reason why I've included this is because it doesn't actually have to cost anything. You can go to a library. Yes, I know, what a foreign concept to modern society, but yeah, you'd be surprised. And I actually enjoy the process of going to a library. At the moment, I will admit, I don't go to a library, I buy my books, but if I didn't want to spend money and I also wanted that aspect of community and a third space, check if you're in the UK, your local council, and see if there is a library near you, because I think it's a really lovely thing. You can take your laptop and work there. The other day I was in Marylebone and I was like at Watch House. It's like a, blank street type of vibe. And I was like having an iced latte, and it was like £4 something. And that's fine. I'm happy to pay that to sit there because actually it's quite a good deal. But, they kicked me out after a certain time because it makes sense. Like, I didn't want to be holding anyone else up that just wanted to go for coffee. It is annoying to just see people on their laptops, like, taking up the space. So I was a bit stranded, and I just went to the Marylebone Library, and actually it was such a pleasant experience. It felt so much more calming, and I didn't, the whole time I was working in the cafe, I felt rushed. I felt like watched, or like when they're going to kick me out. But at the library, I was just like completely in my zone. I was with other people that were working on their laptops, and I could actually just go and pick up a book if I wanted to research something to include it in my writing. So really recommend going to check out your local library, because being luxurious or being a rich girl is also about being educated, having hobbies and culture, and just being interested and curious about the world. So reading is definitely a luxurious hobby. Number 8 is trying to reduce phone time. So maybe doing a digital detox or putting your phone on a certain do not disturb setting, so you block out social media in the evenings. I've seen a lot of people say that digital screen time or our exposure to the digital world will be a wealth signal, well, now or in the future. So like, you know, really successful or rich people probably won't be on social media as much because they don't have as much to prove. And I do actually think that. So if you kind of want to signal that, not that we're trying to do that, but if you were, say, for example, wanting to be more wealthy, more rich in your mindset, having that same mentality that, you know what, I'm just going to not go on my phone in the evenings. I'm going to limit people's access to me. You know, at the moment, we have so much access to people. I could just go and DM someone that has hundreds or thousands of followers and they might even reply, and that's insane. And it's good for opportunities, but at the same time, as a person on the receiving end, it's not so great for our mental health. And I think stepping away from that and just saying, okay, in the evenings, I'm not going to go on my phone, I think that can actually feel like a very luxurious activity, doing things offline and building your brand offline and also just relaxing. I think that can be a really easy way to make your life feel luxurious, is just touching some grass and doing a digital detox. Number 9 is curating your forever wardrobe with natural fibers. Now, controversial because I'm not trying to be classist when I say this, because I think that it's not the consumer's fault that they are buying cheap polyester because potentially that's what they can afford, or potentially they aren't educated on natural fibers. That is not the consumer's fault. That's the big corporations' fault. So I'm definitely not trying to blame the consumer or actually make people feel bad or feel like they can't afford to shop natural. But what I will say is that it doesn't cost anything to learn, and knowledge these days is free. So I would say doing your research on natural fibers, on where to shop. I personally only shop secondhand really, on Vinted, or if I do buy something new, I had to have thought about it for a while. But most of the time I get my stuff on Vinted. Like 90% of my wardrobe is secondhand, but that just shows you don't need to spend an arm and a leg. Like, you know, I've got a Burberry trench coat, for example, which I paid 160, but you know, the retail price would be 1,000 something. So, you know, and then probably Zara would sell the same trench coat for like £200 if it was part of their premium collection. So it's just like, I'd rather get something that's vintage or unique or secondhand from a natural fiber for much less than it would retail for. And I think if you're very savvy and you take the time to do your research, I think you can have a level up with your wardrobe without spending a ton. Also, if you did step 2 and you decluttered, you would probably sell stuff and then you can use that money to buy more clothes, which is ultimate girl maths. Number 10 is probably like another controversial one, but it's swapping processed foods or processed snacks for healthy ones. Now, this is problematic because yes, like it is more expensive to eat healthier, and so it can't be a luxury for £0, of course. But if you're already, you know, spending a lot on processed sweets, chocolates, crisps, you know, you name it, I think maybe, again, this could be like reading a book about processed foods. Like Ultra Processed People is an amazing book and I'd really recommend it to anyone. Just reading more about it and researching, I think you'll come to find out that buying these snacks, Doritos, Pringles, it's really bad for you. And we all know that. We all know that they're bad for us, but we don't really know why. But I think the reason why I say it's a luxury for £0 is that if you're already spending a lot on those things, you could make a swap. You could instead get some, I don't know, some dates and peanut butter, or some berries, or some, you know, walnuts, or just, you know, something a bit healthier, maybe some dark chocolate. Or I guess it's just about making more intentional choices with your snacks. But obviously I'm not trying to make health advice or dictate to anyone how they should behave, but I think that just having more healthy snacks feels luxurious because by inherently they are more expensive. But I'd rather get less quantity and higher quality and still spend the same amount. So if your budget for snacks was £10 or £15, you could definitely get some gorgeous natural food for that price. So those are some frugal chic ways to feel more elevated, to feel more luxurious on a budget. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe so you don't miss out on further content from me. I drop a video every Sunday. Yeah, you can check out frugalchic.co.uk for my newsletter, and check out my personal TikTok and Instagram. It's just my name, Mia McGrath. And I'll see you guys in the next one.